When they speak about a crossover, they are not talking about basketball this time. This time, they aren't talking about the crossover you may see when a dude dresses like a girl. This type of crossover happens when you come from a sport like boxing and go to the UFC. We have seen fights like these before, but coming up on August 5th, 2023, Nate Diaz is set to box Jake Paul inside the octagon at the American Airlines Center in Dallas. Nate Diaz has sparked the conversation about returning to the UFC to win, quote, his belts back, and he is going to start it off by fighting Jake Paul. Nate Diaz has much more experience inside the cage compared to Paul, who only has one fight under his belt, which resulted in a loss to Tony Ferguson last September. Many people have given their predictions, including Dana White himself, who was asked at the UFC 287 Fight Night in Kansas City post-conference interview. He sits there for a second and thinks to himself, and after a few moments, he figures the best thing to do is say nothing. Refusing to give his opinion, he states, "I don't want to crap on other people's fights, like Oscar De La Weirdo." He continues, "But yeah, nah, I don't want to talk about the fight. First of all, neither of these guys is my guy. There's just no need for me to comment on it or whatever. I wish him the best. I hope they make $1 zillion." It seems like Dana is hiding something. It is probably an unpopular opinion. He blasted other crossover fights in the past, calling them silly, stupid, and a frickin' waste of time. Dana was a part of the biggest crossover fight in history when he co-promoted Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. But he thinks fights like these should take off on their own. Crossover fights do their best when they take a life of their own, and people are naturally attracted to them. Conor McGregor, the 2017 crossover superstar, also gave his public opinion on the matchup between ex-UFC star Nate Diaz and boxer, influencer, and now UFC contender Jake Paul. He spoke to Inside Fighting and dropped a solid prediction on who he thinks may win this fight. Nate Diaz slaps the head off Jake Paul. Looking forward to seeing it.
Nate Diaz, Jake Paul fight.
I think Nate Diaz slaps the head off, and I look forward to seeing it.
Quite the prediction. Sounds like a good old Irish fellow. He was then asked if he would be in attendance in Dallas while the two guys show down. Unfortunately not, but he will probably be in the Lamborghini just off the coast of Sicily.
Jesus, I'll probably be on the Lamborghini just off the coast of Sicily. I'll be on the Lamborghini off the coast of Sicily.
I wonder what it's like to be Conor McGregor. Even Coach Frock had an opinion on Jake Paul, backing him up by saying, "I think it's a wise choice for Paul to fight Nate Diaz, because it should be a comfortable win."
So I think it's a wise choice for Jake Paul to fight Nate Diaz.
Nate Diaz has had memorable wins over people such as Conor McGregor in 2016, but this will be his first boxing match. Coach Frock continues to support his claims by saying, "I think Nate Diaz is half his height as well. He's quite small. He's like half a leprechaun, isn't he? Or is he a full leprechaun? But he's a small geezer." Nate Diaz is also 38 years old, so it is a wise move. What would be even more wise is to follow him over the rainbow into the pot of gold. And that's the thing. This fight should rake in tons of money being a crossover fight. Some even think that if they do it right, Nate Diaz should expect to take home an 8-figure paycheck. Dun dun dun! Breaking news! As of April 26, 2023, Nate Diaz broke his silence after getting into a street fight with Paul's lookalike, Rodney Peterson. What the hell, Rodney? Diaz is wanted by the New Orleans police for his involvement in a street fight about a week ago. His lawyer, Walter Becker, has now been in contact with the police regarding his warrant for arrest and confirms it was after his teammate Chris Avila's fight against Paul Bamba at Misfits Boxing 6. Video footage shows the two fighting with the Paul lookalike unconscious in a chokehold while kneeing him in the stomach before dropping to the ground and walking away. Peterson, actually an amateur MMA fighter who is blue belted in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, says his head was bloody and injured as a result of being dropped to the ground. Diaz's representative has claimed that Peterson aggressively pursued the encounter with the intention of engaging Diaz in combat. A report further confirms that Nate Diaz's attorney looks forward to bringing all the evidence to the table for the district attorney, where he can clearly demonstrate that the lookalike is a trained fighter and pursued Nate with intentions to engage him, and he simply responded with actions of self-defense. Until further notice, Diaz is being charged with second-degree battery, a felony in the state of Louisiana, punishable up to 8 years in prison. Nobody knows if this will affect his plans to compete against Jake Paul in his professional boxing debut. Nate has since broken silence on the issue and hinted that he will pull out of the fight and suggest somebody like KSI replace him. Nate tweeted, "Lol, why don't you two scared guys just fight each other? August? I'll fight someone who can really fight." KSI has responded to Nate via Twitter, tweeting, "Well, if that means Jake won't have an opponent in August, then I'll gladly come as a replacement after I KO Joe Fournier in May." Even Jake Paul himself replied to both of these fools. "Great, I accept you as the backup opponent. The fight is at 185. There are no rehydration clauses, stay in shape, and we will give you a call if needed. Thank you, buddy, for being so humble and committed." Last but not least, MMA legend Anderson Silva weighs in on the topic. For Silva, the fight isn't about power, but rather another elite attribute of the fight game: timing. He states, "The fight is not about power, it's about timing," to Marcos Villegas of Fight Hub TV. "Nate has more experience and has good boxing and cardio, and I respect both fighters." Silva believes that experience plays a part in this fight, but still says it's hard to tell who may win this one. Jake has devoted his life to the sport of boxing, whereas Nate Diaz has been a jack of all trades, fighting in mixed martial arts for nearly 3 decades. When asked who he thinks will win, he says, "I don't know, it's very tough." You know it's very tough because everybody thinks Jake is not training boxing, but Jake is training a lot. When asked about the difference between the two, he made it very clear. Paul might have an edge on the inside, but Paul will be prepared and have a different mentality when entering the ring on fight night. He also says that fighting a Diaz brother is different than fighting any other opponents you may face. You will need to be ready for anything. He closes with one last thing about Jake Paul. You know Jake Paul is very smart in the short distance. You know Nate is a beast. You know when you go inside to fight with Nate Diaz, you need to prepare yourself for war because both of the Diaz brothers fight crazy.
You know, Nate, stop fighting people for free. Let's do it in the ring, okay? I know you're a little slow, buddy, but it's okay. We can make that fight happen.
There you have it, folks. Everybody has spoken and the showdown awaits. Whether it's Nate Diaz or KSI, many people are anticipating Jake Paul inside the ring on August 5th in Dallas.